Hollywood's golden age was a masterpiece of illusion. Cameras, lighting, and makeup turned ordinary women into flawless icons the world adored. But off-screen, many looked nothing like the glamorous figures they played. Away from the spotlight, their beauty was simpler, softer, sometimes unrecognizable. Yet that contrast only made them more fascinating, proof that stardom isn't about perfection, but transformation. These actresses remind us that movie magic can change faces, but not spirit. Here are 16 vintage stars who look nothing like their on-screen image, and the real women behind the legend. Greta Garbo. On screen, Greta Garbo looked untouchable, the kind of beauty that didn't belong to the real world. Her face was sculpted in light, her expression soft and haunting, her silence louder than dialogue. Hollywood worshipped her mystery, shaping her into the ultimate goddess of the silver screen. But the woman behind that image was nothing like the luminous figure audiences adored. Off camera, Garbo was plain, almost severe. She rarely wore makeup, avoided stylish clothes, and moved through life with the quiet of someone desperate not to be seen. Her jawline, so elegantly framed on film, looked sharper in person. Her features, once romanticized by perfect lighting, appeared ordinary in daylight. She preferred long walks alone in oversized coats, living a life stripped of everything glamorous. Garbo hated publicity. She once said, "I want to be left alone," and she meant it. While her peers attended parties and premieres, she hid from photographers, refusing interviews and fans alike. It wasn't vanity or arrogance, it was exhaustion. Hollywood had turned her into an illusion she could never live up to, and she chose solitude over the suffocating expectations of beauty. When she left acting in her 30s, she disappeared almost completely, aging gracefully and naturally, without care for cameras or opinion. The woman who once embodied divine allure became her truest self, human, flawed, free. Greta Garbo's real beauty wasn't what the camera created. It was what it couldn't capture, her quiet defiance against a world obsessed with illusion. Katherine Hepburn. Katherine Hepburn was Hollywood's rebel long before rebellion was fashionable. On screen, she was a whirlwind, elegant, confident, and razor-sharp. The image of upper-class grace and independence. Her cheekbones cut like glass, her posture radiated pride, and her voice carried the rhythm of authority. But away from the polished lights of MGM, Hepburn was nothing like the cinematic queen audiences imagined. In real life, she was wiry, awkward, and completely uninterested in glamour. She wore loose trousers, uncombed hair, and no makeup, long before such choices were acceptable for women in Hollywood. Reporters called her boyish, sometimes even unfeminine, but she didn't care. "If you obey all the rules, you miss all the fun," she once said, and she lived by it. Her on-screen refinement came from acting, not vanity. Behind that controlled poise was a woman who climbed trees, swam in icy water, and avoided high society like the plague. She hated the confinement of corsets and refused to be softened for anyone's comfort. Even in her later years, when the industry celebrated her as one of its greatest actresses, she still showed up barefaced and blunt, unimpressed by fame. Katherine Hepburn's real strength was raw independence. She wasn't the glamorous heroine the world adored. She was something better, real, restless, and absolutely unapologetic. The magic of her beauty wasn't in perfection. Bette Davis. Bette Davis never looked like the Hollywood standard of beauty, and she knew it. While the screen adored soft faces and dreamy eyes, Davis's beauty was fierce, expressive, and unpredictable. On screen, she was magnetic. Her stare could slice through silence. Her voice dripped with sarcasm or sorrow, and her presence filled every frame. Directors called her difficult. Audiences called her unforgettable. But away from the studio lights, she was far from the glamorous image people imagined. Off-screen, Davis was small, sharp-featured, and often tired from her endless battles with the Hollywood system. Her eyes, that legendary glare, looked less hypnotic without the lighting and lashes that defined her roles. She smoked constantly, cursed freely, and dressed for comfort, not spectacle. She didn't play the dainty movie star. She walked like a woman who didn't owe the world a smile. Davis had no illusions about her looks, and that was her secret. While others relied on makeup and charm, she built her legacy on raw talent, emotional honesty, and sheer will. As she aged, She didn't hide behind surgery or fantasy. She let the wrinkles show, proud of every line carved by survival. The woman who once ruled the screen with fury and fire ended her days still defiant, still herself. Marlene Dietrich. Marlene Dietrich was the embodiment of glamour, a walking fantasy, sculpted by light, shadow, and mystery. On screen, she was untouchable. The smoky eyes, the sculpted cheekbones, the whispering voice that could melt or command a room. Her beauty seemed supernatural, as if she had stepped out of a dream rather than makeup and light. Every movement, every glance felt deliberate, calculated perfection. But behind that breathtaking illusion was a woman far different from the sultry siren the world worshipped. Off camera, Dietrich was astonishingly ordinary. Her porcelain skin, stripped of foundation, was pale and uneven. Her face, without the famous contour, revealed softer lines, even a quiet sadness. The lethal stare that once seduced the world was built by careful lighting, pencil-thin eyebrows, and the power of shadows. Dietrich knew this better than anyone. She was the architect of her own image. She would spend hours adjusting lamps and testing angles, refusing to let the camera roll until she appeared exactly as she imagined. Her beauty was an invention, but it was also her armor. Away from the set, Dietrich rejected the fragile femininity Hollywood tried to enforce. She wore trousers, men's jackets, and crisp shirts long before it was accepted. To her, androgyny was freedom. She wasn't trying to shock anyone, she simply lived the truth of who she was. Her confidence made her unforgettable, a woman who defied the very mold that made her famous. In her later years, when age began to soften her face and time threatened her myth, Dietrich retreated from the public eye. She lived reclusively in Paris, refusing to be photographed, guarding her legend like a secret, Joan Crawford. Joan Crawford was the face of Hollywood ambition. Sharp, elegant, and always perfectly lit. On screen, she shimmered with confidence, a woman in control, sculpted cheekbones, arched brows, and lips painted into power. Every gesture, every glance was precise, projecting strength, sophistication, and authority. Her presence filled the frame, making her seem larger than life. She was the definition of glamour, the image of what Hollywood demanded women to be. Flawless, poised, and magnetic. But behind the camera, the real Joan Crawford looked and lived in a way that was far removed from the goddess audiences believed they knew. Off-screen, Crawford's beauty was meticulously constructed. She spent hours perfecting makeup, mastering lighting, and learning to pose so that every angle reinforced her carefully crafted image. Without contouring, heavy lashes, and studio lighting, her features were ordinary, even harsh. She had freckles, uneven skin, and a nervous energy that made her seem smaller, almost vulnerable. Crawford understood that her survival in Hollywood depended on appearance. She was her own work of art, a woman determined to refuse plainness at any cost. Her obsession with perfection often bordered on compulsion. She bleached her teeth, taped her skin to lift sagging features, and demanded flawless lighting even during interviews and public appearances. Beneath the glamorous facade lay a deep insecurity, the fear that without her carefully curated image, she might disappear into obscurity. She once said, "If I wasn't a star, what would I be?" And that question haunted her. Even as she aged and her flawless image began to crumble, Crawford's determination never wavered. She continued to present herself impeccably, keeping the illusion alive. Joan Crawford wasn't born beautiful. She fought for it. And it was that relentless fight, that sheer will to create and maintain her image, that ultimately became her enduring legend. Veronica Lake. Veronica Lake was the golden dream of the 1940s, the woman whose peekaboo hairstyle became a national obsession. On screen, she was a lure, soft voice, half-hidden eyes, and a face that seemed made for black and white film. She moved with a calm, hypnotic grace, the kind of beauty that looked effortless. But away from the screen, Veronica Lake was almost unrecognizable, smaller, rougher, and far from the fantasy Hollywood had created. Off camera, her famous waves fell limp without studio styling, and her delicate features appeared harder under natural light. The illusion of mystery vanished, revealing a tired young woman who struggled with shyness, alcohol, and the heavy pressure of fame. Her skin wasn't flawless, her figure wasn't as perfect as the camera made it seem, and her beauty, though real, was fragile, dependent on perfect angles and perfect light. Lake hated the image that made her famous. The hairstyle that launched her to stardom also trapped her, reducing her to a gimmick she could never escape. During World War II, women working in factories were even told to pin their hair up for safety, and Lake was blamed for inspiring a dangerous trend. The glamour turned against her, and so did Hollywood. As the years passed, she faded into near poverty, a far cry from the luminous siren who once ruled the screen. Rita Hayworth. Rita Hayworth was Hollywood's ultimate dream: red lips, copper curls, and a face that defined desire. On screen, she was perfection itself, the femme fatale who made men forget reason and women admire her poise. Every glance, every movement radiated confidence and allure. Her performance in Gilda sealed her image forever, a goddess of seduction, untouchable and hypnotic. But off-screen, the real Rita looked and lived nothing like that fantasy. Born Margarita Cancino, she was of Spanish descent, with dark hair, olive skin, and a naturally shy, almost timid presence. When she first arrived in Hollywood, studios told her she looked too foreign. To fit the American screen ideal, she endured a grueling transformation, painful electrolysis to raise her hairline, her naturally dark hair dyed red, her skin lightened, and her accent erased. The woman audiences adored on screen was a carefully constructed illusion. Without curls, lipstick, and lighting, she looked softer, almost childlike, far removed from the glamorous bombshell Hollywood celebrated. Offset, Rita was quiet, gentle, and modest. Friends described her as shy and easily embarrassed, preferring simple clothes to flowing gowns. She often struggled with the immense pressure of maintaining the perfect image and carried a subtle sadness behind her smile. "Men go to bed with Gilda," she once said, "but they wake up with me." That confession revealed the stark contrast between her legendary screen persona and her real self. As the years passed, the glamour faded. Heartbreak, divorce, and illness marked her private life. Yet, she retained dignity and grace. Marilyn Monroe. Marilyn Monroe was Hollywood's most dazzling illusion, the woman who seemed to glow from within, every movement a tease, every smile a promise. On screen, she was the embodiment of desire, platinum hair, red lips, and a voice that dripped innocence and sin at once. She looked like the dream every man wanted and every woman secretly envied. But off-screen, Marilyn was nothing like that. Before fame, she was Norma Jean Mortensen, a freckled, brown-haired girl with uncertain eyes and a nervous laugh. Her beauty was natural but unpolished, the kind you might not notice twice in a crowd. Hollywood changed everything. Her hair bleached to perfection, her teeth capped, her posture trained, and her breathy voice carefully coached. The Marilyn the world adored was a creation, fragile, artificial, yet intoxicatingly real on film. Without the makeup and lights, she looked softer, smaller, and sometimes heartbreakingly plain. She often walked the streets unrecognized, wearing simple clothes, her hair tied back. Friends said she could turn off Marilyn at will, 1 minute glowing like a star, the next fading into invisibility. Beneath that crafted beauty was a woman consumed by loneliness and self-doubt. She once said she was not a sex symbol. She was a human being, but Hollywood never let her be human. It demanded she remain the fantasy forever. In the end, Marilyn Monroe's power came not from perfection, but from vulnerability, the way she let the world see its own longing reflected in her. Mae West. Mae West was the woman who taught Hollywood how to flirt. On screen, she was larger than life, the slow walk, the teasing smile, the voice that dripped with confidence, charm, and danger. She didn't just play the role of a seductress, she owned it. With her hourglass figure, bold one-liners, and fearless presence, Mae West became a symbol of irresistible power, a woman whose allure felt untouchable. Every glance, every gesture, every pause was calculated to enthrall. Yet, behind the stage lights and studio magic, the woman who created that persona was far less polished and far more fascinating. In reality, Mae West didn't naturally resemble the sultry figure the camera immortalized. She was short, barely 5 feet tall, with a sturdy, solid build. and a face that, without heavy makeup, contouring, and false lashes, appeared quite ordinary. Her signature curves were enhanced with corsets and padding, her flawless complexion crafted with thick makeup and studio lighting. She understood the mechanics of illusion better than anyone, using fashion, camera angles, and clever lighting to command attention. Mae West didn't simply play a part. She invented herself. Off-screen, she was fiercely intelligent, disciplined, and business-minded. She wrote most of her own scripts, negotiated her contracts, and managed her public image with an iron hand. She rarely allowed the press to see her unprepared, ensuring her persona remained intact. Beneath the jokes and overt sensuality was a woman of sharp wit and strategic mind, who built her empire on control as much as charm. Even in private, Mae West rarely dropped her mask completely. She was generous and kind, yet always aware of her power. Judy Garland. Judy Garland was the girl who captured the world's heart before she was even old enough to understand fame. On screen, she was luminous, sweet, wide-eyed, and full of wonder. From The Wizard of Oz to her tear-stained ballads, she seemed born to shine. But behind the stage lights, Judy looked and lived nothing like the radiant image audiences adored. Off-camera, she was small and delicate, with tired eyes that told a story Hollywood refused to see. Her famous glow came from lighting and layers of studio makeup. Without it, she looked years older than her age, worn down by exhaustion and anxiety. The studio never stopped reminding her she wasn't beautiful enough, forcing her onto strict diets and feeding her pills to control her weight and energy. The fantasy of Judy Garland, the perfect girl with the perfect voice, was built on pain. She longed for normalcy, but even her reflection was not her own. Her teeth, hairline, and even her nose were altered to fit the studio's idea of beauty. In private, she hid under scarves and dark glasses, tired of pretending. Her laughter off-screen was softer, hesitant, a far cry from the joyous sound that filled theaters. Judy Garland's beauty wasn't in her face or her figure, it was in her heart, in the way she sang her sorrow until it sounded like hope. The woman who looked like a dream on film was, in truth, a fragile soul fighting to exist beyond the image. Hedy Lamarr. Hedy Lamarr was often called the most beautiful woman in the world. On screen, she looked like something carved from light itself. Flawless skin, hypnotic eyes, and a face so perfectly sculpted that it almost seemed unreal. Directors lit her like a jewel, and audiences around the globe worshipped her image. She moved with grace, spoke with a soft, captivating voice, and seemed to embody an untouchable glamour. But off-camera, the woman behind that perfect image was very different from the Hollywood legend the world adored. Without makeup, contouring, or carefully arranged lighting, Lamarr's beauty softened into something far more human. Her perfect symmetry looked less dramatic, her eyes less striking, and her features more ordinary under natural light. Yet the biggest difference between the on-screen Hedy and the real Hedy wasn't just her looks, it was her identity. Hollywood cast her as an exotic temptress, but in truth, Lamarr was a thinker, a dreamer, and an inventor trapped in a movie star's body. While the world focused on her face, she was secretly designing inventions. Most famously, she co-created a frequency-hopping system intended to make torpedoes harder to detect, a technology that later became the foundation for Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, and secure communications. Away from the cameras, she dressed plainly, spoke softly, and preferred a quiet life, often unnoticed by the crowds who only saw the glamorous exterior. Lamarr said, "Any girl can be glamorous. All you have to do is stand still and look stupid." It wasn't bitterness, it was a statement of truth. Hollywood made her a symbol, not a woman. Her real beauty wasn't her flawless face or seductive presence. It was her brilliant mind, her courage to invent, and her ability to shine in silence. Billie Burke. Billie Burke is best remembered as Glinda the Good Witch in The Wizard of Oz, radiant, graceful, and glowing in soft pink light. On screen, she looked ethereal, almost angelic, her face framed by curls and glitter. Audiences saw her as the embodiment of sweetness and elegance. But in real life, Billie Burke looked and acted nothing like the magical woman the world adored. Off-screen, she was a sharp-tongued, witty socialite with a nervous laugh and a face far less delicate than the camera suggested. Without the soft focus and heavy makeup, her features appeared older, more angular, and less fairy-like. She had a quick mind and an even quicker temper, often described as fussy, eccentric, and anxious. Her beauty, gentle and glowing on film, was the result of expert lighting and careful styling that hid wrinkles and age. By the time she played Glinda, Billie was in her mid-50s. Yet, Hollywood made her look decades younger. She knew the power of illusion and leaned into it, charming audiences with warmth and poise while quietly battling insecurity about her fading youth. In private, she preferred simple clothes and minimal fuss, far removed from the shimmering gowns she wore on screen. Beneath her polished image was a woman who had endured deep loss, including the death of her husband, Florenz Ziegfeld, and the struggle to keep working in an industry that worshipped youth. Carole Lombard. Carole Lombard was the queen of screwball comedy, quick-witted, effortlessly beautiful, and sparkling with charm. On screen, she radiated confidence and sophistication, every gesture graceful, every smile camera-ready. Her beauty seemed natural, her timing flawless, her energy intoxicating. Yet, the woman behind that golden image was far more down-to-earth, rough-edged, and nothing like the polished star Hollywood sold to the world. Off-screen, Lombard was loud, brash, and delightfully unfiltered. She cursed, cracked jokes, and spoke her mind without apology. Without makeup, her famous porcelain glow faded to reveal freckles, a crooked nose from an old car accident, and a tomboyish simplicity. She didn't care for glamour. She wore jeans and men's shirts long before it was fashionable, often showing up to sets looking nothing like the dazzling women she portrayed. Her beauty wasn't about perfection. It was about spirit. Friends called her the profane angel, a title that fit perfectly. She was fiercely independent, witty and generous, with a fire that burned brighter than any movie light. Hollywood's cameras softened her edges, but in real life, she was all edges, raw, funny, alive. Her marriage to Clark Gable made her half of Hollywood's most glamorous couple, but she never let fame dull her humor or honesty. Tragically, her life ended at 33 in a plane crash while returning from a war bond rally, a shocking loss to the industry. Ingrid Bergman. Ingrid Bergman was the picture of purity and grace. On screen, she glowed with effortless beauty, soft, expressive eyes, a calm presence, and an almost angelic aura that seemed untouched by vanity. From Casablanca to Notorious, she embodied what audiences imagined as the perfect woman, elegant, kind, intelligent, and impossibly serene. Every gesture, every glance radiated authenticity, and her natural charisma made her unforgettable. Yet, behind that flawless screen image, the real Ingrid looked and lived very differently than the glamorous star the world admired. Off-camera, Bergman was refreshingly plain. She rarely wore makeup, tied her hair back simply, and often appeared tired or windblown. Her teeth were uneven, her skin prone to blemishes, and her figure was practical rather than the perfect proportions Hollywood demanded. She had little patience for the obsession with outward perfection, famously saying, "I've never sought beauty, only truth." That commitment to honesty made her both admired and, at times, criticized by an industry obsessed with image over substance. Her natural look shocked Hollywood studios. She refused false eyelashes, insisted on being filmed in real light, and prioritized emotion over appearance. That authenticity made her captivating on screen, but it also made her life complicated. When she fell in love with Italian director Roberto Rossellini, the scandal nearly destroyed her career in America. Yet Bergman refused to hide or apologize. She faced judgment with quiet defiance, choosing love and personal integrity over public approval. Even as age softened her glow and wrinkles appeared, she carried herself with the same dignity that had made her legendary. Myrna Loy. Myrna Loy was Hollywood's portrait of elegance, calm, clever, and impossibly refined. On screen, she exuded sophistication, the kind of beauty that felt effortless, intelligent, and approachable. From The Thin Man series to The Best Years of Our Lives, she became the woman who made class seem natural. Her charm was subtle rather than loud, graceful rather than exaggerated, and her presence carried a quiet authority. Audiences admired her not just for her looks, but for the intelligence and poise she conveyed. Yet, Off-screen, the real Myrna Loy looked and lived nothing like the poised perfection that cameras captured so effortlessly. Without makeup or studio lighting, Loy's features were far plainer than the glamour suggested. She had a narrow face, a sharp nose, and a naturally serious expression, all softened only by careful lighting and styling. Early in her career, Hollywood typecast her as the exotic girl, darkening her skin with makeup to play roles far from her Montana roots. Her on-screen beauty was carefully crafted, reshaped by the industries, until audiences saw sophistication where there had been simplicity. In private life, Loy was practical, grounded, and refreshingly ordinary. She preferred comfort over couture, conversation over attention, and had little patience for Hollywood's obsession with image. Friends described her as kind but blunt, a woman who valued intellect, authenticity, and good judgment over vanity. Even the grace audiences admired on screen came from discipline and professionalism, not natural ease. As she aged, she refused to chase youth or conform to Hollywood's standards of beauty. Her on-screen perfection was a mask built from skill and dedication. Beneath it was a real woman, steady, thoughtful, and genuine, Shirley Temple. Shirley Temple was the face of innocence, the dimpled smile, bouncing curls, and sparkling eyes that made her the world's most beloved child star. On screen, she was pure joy incarnate, dancing and singing through the hardships of the Great Depression, as if sunlight itself had taken human form. Hollywood painted her as perfect, cheerful, sweet, and endlessly charming, a symbol of hope and happiness in a world weighed down by despair. Audiences adored her, and for millions, Shirley Temple wasn't just a girl on screen, she was a living fantasy. But behind the camera's glow, the real Shirley looked and lived nothing like the little angel everyone thought they knew. Off-screen, Shirley was a normal child, thrust into an adult world of expectations, schedules, and pressures. Her famous golden curls were not effortless, they were carefully set ringlets, styled every day until her scalp ached. The cherubic face that audiences adored was often tired from long shooting hours, her famous smile rehearsed rather than spontaneous. Without makeup, costumes, and studio lighting, she looked far less like the porcelain doll Hollywood presented. Just a little girl trying to navigate a world she didn't fully understand, striving to please everyone around her. As she grew older, the Hollywood illusion began to crack. Her body matured, her curls loosened, and the audience that had once loved her childhood innocence didn't know how to respond to a teenager or young woman. The studios attempted to reshape her into a leading lady star, but the magic of Shirley Temple could not survive reality. Off-screen, she wrestled with identity, longing to be seen as herself, beyond the manufactured image that had made her famous. Yet, Shirley Temple's true strength emerged over time. She left acting gracefully, reinventing herself as a diplomat, ambassador, and humanitarian, roles that revealed her intelligence, poise, and resilience. Hollywood's golden age was built on transformation, a world where makeup, lighting, and myth could turn ordinary women into goddesses. But behind every glamorous close-up was a real woman, shaped by pressure, pain, and perfection she never truly owned. These actresses didn't just perform on screen, they lived inside the roles the world forced on them. So, which of these stories shocked you the most? Let us know in the comments below. If you found this deep dive eye-opening, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell, because next time, we're peeling back even more untold truths from Hollywood's golden age. Thanks for watching.